This is a really fantastic story of an alchemist who tries to bring back his young apprentice who's dying.
New York Times best-selling fantasy author Victoria V.E. Schwab, that's her on the right, got the VIP treatment at Washington University, courtesy of the curator of rare books, Cassie Brand. WashU is Schwab's alma mater.
What's crazy is I did book arts here too, so I did bookbinding classes while I was here.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Schwab was in town in October to promote the release of her book, The Fragile Threads of Power. It's the first story of a new trilogy, a spin-off of her popular Shades of Magic series.
And then these were meant to add your family crest.
Okay, so it was a highly personalized document. It was one of those almost like a Psalms book or a prayer book where it would have been personalized to the owner.
Exactly.
The morning before her scheduled author appearance, Schwab and Brand poured over a selection of centuries-old books on alchemy, witchcraft, Gothic fiction, and related subjects.
Now, is this a manual? Is this
Yes. So this is a legitimate, here's how you identify
a witch.
A witch.
Wow.
V.E. Schwab was born in California and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. But when it came time to decide where to go to college, she chose this one. And how did you decide on WashU?
I decided for the trees. I toured 19 colleges, and then 2 days before Christmas, I came on a whim and visited Washington University, fell in love with the campus, and applied and got an early decision. Was meant to come for astrophysics, changed my major 6 times, and ended up graduating with a degree in book design because my parents were like, please just graduate, we know you're gonna be a writer.
They knew that?
Yeah.
When did you know that?
I think I love telling stories from a really young age, but I never thought I'd be a novelist because it's a huge lift. The idea of keeping a 3 or 5 or 800-page novel in your head, it seemed too large for me. So I avoided it until I was 18. And then I was just about to turn 19 and I realized that the reason I hadn't tried to write a novel was because I was terrified of failing to write a novel. I have a very adversarial nature when it comes to fear. And so I sat down here on campus and began to write my very first novel when I was 19. And it was terrible. It didn't get published, but it did get me a literary agent. And when I was a second semester senior here at the Sam Fox School of the Visual Arts, I started checking out of my studio space every night and going over to Caldy's coffee shop. And between 9 and 11 p.m. when they closed, I would work on my next book. And that would become my first published novel. The fall after I graduated, it would sell.
That novel, The Near Witch, was published in 2011. It was a milestone event, but for Schwab, not exactly life-changing.
I think you expect the world to change, and it doesn't. I mean, it's incredible and it's exciting, but like so many firsts, the best part about it is that you come out of it with the experience of how to do it again and how to do it better. You come out of it with the knowledge that you can. So I did not shoot to the top of a bestseller list. I did not become a really big name. I did not become a household figure. I was a baby author. I was a 21-year-old with a tiny book that went out of print after 18 months. And then I wrote another book, and that would become the beginning of a trilogy that would be canceled after 2 books. And I was 25, and I think I was about to quit publishing. And instead, I decided to write a swan song, a book that was exactly what I wanted it to be. I wrote a book called Vicious, and that book would end up becoming my first adult novel and would change the shape of the rest of my career. And now I'm 23 books in, and it's pretty surreal to be back where it all started. I would love it if people just assumed that, like, oh, I must have like made a deal with the devil to get my power.
Schwab maintains a loyal following, due in part to her astute use of social media and the internet.
Hi, and welcome to the official Shades of Magic read-along. I think the only thing that makes it official is the fact that I wrote the book and I'm the one doing the read-along. This is how it works. Every week I'm going to upload a video talking about a specific section of the book. You can either read that section before you tune in, or you can just tune in and treat this as a recap.
So with an assist from YouTube, both newcomers to V.E. Schwab's work and longtime followers gain insight into the author's creative process.
It's nice, and I think it's a really special experience when the writer does it, because There are little backstories, little notes that I can tell you about why I wrote a specific moment or how it felt to write it. And I think what social media does is create that sense of community. Now, books themselves create a sense of community because I read a book, you read the same book, and we have a shared experience now, where we have obviously brought very different things to the book that we're reading, but they've lived in both of our minds. For me, though, social media has always been really important because I started in publishing when I was so young. And to start in publishing at 19, the thing that they don't tell you about the first book experience is that it's pretty lonely. You are an island, and because you don't have a lot of context, because you can't really see what's happening in everybody else's journey, you assume that when you're having hard days, it's a reflection on you, and not the fact that the industry is hard, not the fact that creating is hard. And so I set out a goal, I guess like 17 years ago when I started, that I wanted to make my platform about authenticity. That I wanted to be really honest about the creative journey. I wanted to be honest about the great days and the bad days. I wanted to be honest about the fact that writing books is lonely and difficult. And I find that if nothing else, it's less about communicating with my readers about my books, and it's more about communicating with readers and writers about the process of making books, about giving them a little bit of a behind the scenes look so that they feel just as invested in the story and its journey to publication as I do.
Calliope Antigone Burns is the youngest and the only female in a family of 2 boys. Her biggest thing is just trying to prove to her family that she deserves respect as a monster hunter.
The Netflix series First Kill, a supernatural tale of teenage love between a vampire and a monster hunter, is based on a V.E. Schwab short story. She served as a writer and producer for the series. The author found the experience a radical departure from working solo.
Talk about a very different experience of creativity. When you're writing a novel, you're essentially playing God. For everything that you invent, for everything that lives on that page, you are responsible for it. And you go to TV and film and you work in adaptation and you are the smallest god in a very large pantheon of gods. And so it becomes a communal effort. And I always think it's kind of extraordinary whenever anything is good, because when you have 300 people working to bring one vision to life, what you really have is 300 visions. And so it's an incredible experience, though, the very first time I was on set and I saw the actors that were playing my characters walk into the room to do their blocking, and I thought to myself, I made you up on a Tuesday. Like, I made you up. Like, I made you up and I named you. Like, I just think it's fascinating that then somebody can step into the world, and it's like seeing a part of your mind walk into the room.
Fragile Threads of Power starts 7 years after the end of Conjuring of Light, the 3rd book in the Shades of Magic series. But if you haven't read those books, you should be able to start with Fragile Threads of Power. Don't listen to the Shades of Magic readers. They will tell you you can't do it.
The evening after our interview, V.E. Schwab and fellow writer Alex E. Harrow spoke to a packed house of more than 600 people at the Sun Theater. It's a far cry from her first book event, which she said drew a grand total of 4. These days, the author makes her home in Scotland. The magical world she creates have made life pretty good in the real one.
I feel so lucky to get to make things up for a living, to get to invent escapism for a living, and then to get to share it with other people. When tour gets hard and when tour gets tiring, which it does, of course, there's a huge amount of mundanity. I just remember that at the end of each travel day, I get to meet readers.
For Living St. Louis, I'm Ruth Ezell.